Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Just a little precursor before the actual episode starts is we wanted to do an episode that kind of at least talk through at a high level my career and kind of how it connected together and how it eventually led us to the creation of Cyberdogz. I get asked a lot by other entrepreneurs, people in the industry, and even people like Kira who work with me that how did you do this, or how did you get started? Where was your mind at? So we decided to create a bonus episode where we just kind of talk through some of these things. And yes, to some degree, we dust over the many details that kind of went into some of this stuff, but we definitely kind of touched on the different milestones and the aspects that kind of connected together that helped me make some decisions on how to advance my career, to how to become a better entrepreneur, and how to learn from others throughout that process. So we hope you like it. There's two parts to this. So if you're listening to part one or part two, either way, just know there's two parts, and I hope you enjoy it. And obviously, as always, if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to hear more from us about any of these topics, please reach out to us to let us know. Thanks. Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. I have Kira back on the show today to talk about, well, I guess we're going to talk about me a little bit. We're going to talk about kind of the career, how I got started, kind of the path that I was lucky enough to take, and kind of what brought me to 2021 and owner of Cyberdogz and everything that I have going on today. So Kira, welcome again.
Oh, well, thanks again for having me on. But we're going to go way back, and we're gonna go back like a vintage retro here. And so the first question I have for you is, when you're growing up, and everybody graduate from kindergarten and they have kindergarten graduation, and you say, all right, what do you want to be? So what did you think you wanted to be when you grew up?
I always knew that I wanted to be an artist of some sort at a very young age. I can't exactly tell you when. It would have been like first or second grade. I wanted to be a Disney cartoonist, Disney illustrator. I used to draw, cartoon, just do a ton of stuff just on my own, drawing pictures for teachers. And it was just always something that I did. I was a doodler when I would take notes for school. And I actually, I can remember back as the first or second grade, drawing pictures for teachers and, being asked to do stuff for the class and whatever. So I was pretty young.
Let's fast forward, 15 or so years. So you graduate high school and you go to college. What'd you go to school for?
For the longest time, it doesn't really matter. You talk about you want to be a Disney artist or a comic book artist or whatever it was. It's just something you just want to do, or you say you want to do. And then when you get into high school, the conversation changes, and then they start asking you some questions. Well, how are you going to do that? And where are you going to go to school? And I would say, midway through high school, I had a couple pretty good art teachers that kind of helped me kind of at least think about it a little differently as to how I would make that work. And, I would say, growing up in a small town in Minnesota, most people are like, that's a waste of time. Art is not how you make money. You got to get out and get a job. You got to, so there wasn't a ton of support there coming from a small town, but I knew that it was always something that I wanted to do. And I knew there were other people out there that had made a go of it. And there were, like I said, Disney and the comic book industry and just straight up, illustration and cartoonists who were doing like syndicated cartoons like Garfield or Family Circle, Peanuts, with Charles Schultz. He's from Minnesota. I knew it was like, well, other people have done it, so why can't I do it? So going through those art classes, like in high school, I just remember we would do all these different projects, that were assigned to us from the art teacher. And I would always find a way to manipulate it or somehow problem solve it into a way where I could do what I was good at, which was the cartooning, the illustration, the drawing part of it. So when I got to be in about 9th, 10th, 11th grade, getting closer to, hey, I got to start making some life decisions. I just started, kind of looking at those industries different and trying to find a way to monetize what I was doing. So even in my, I would say, junior, senior year, I was doing different art projects for people for money, whether it was putting numbers on their race car or whatever it was, finding a way to somehow make money doing it. But I was even teaching some like adult education classes as a junior and senior, and teaching people how to paint and draw. And I was lucky. I say private lesson as though it was some prestigious thing, but it was just actually I was lucky enough to be offered this from a local artist. So we had a local artist in our town who was, I would say, regionally famous. Like he was in the state, I think he was semi well known. Most people have heard of like a Terry Redlin, who's super famous. He's from South Dakota. He does a ton of like wildlife and lifestyle type paintings, kind of that old school type stuff. This guy that lived in my hometown, he was similar to that. And I would say, like I said, he was locally pretty well known, and regionally, I think people knew of him. Well, there what was called a Minnesota mentorship program. Basically, it was a statewide art contest where people at different age ranges could basically enter into this art contest. And then within different categories and industries, you could basically mentor under different kinds of artists, whether it was fine arts or sculpture or whatever it was. Well, I had entered that and submitted, more cartoony looking type stuff. And I remember standing out like a sore thumb at the time because all the other submissions were, people trying to do, painting of some sort, whether it was watercolor, acrylic, whatever, or even doing like wildlife drawings or whatever. So the guy that showed up with the cartooning was probably not going to win. I mean, I almost sensed it, while I was there. And that's exactly what happened was I got like an honorable mention, but I did not win. It was kind of like, well, whatever, that's fine. But that local artist, small town, everybody knows everybody, but that local artist knew who I was, and then went and found my mom in the crowd and said, hey, he was actually one of the judges as well, but he basically said, hey, I thought Mike should have done better. I thought he should have won. And I would like to just offer him a mentorship, whether he won or not, just give him the same treatment that everybody else is going to get. And we'll just give him the opportunity to come in and mentor and spend some time with me. And of course, I wanted to do it, but I also really didn't have an option. My parents are like, you're doing it. So that summer, I think it was once a week, but I would go over to his house once a week and he would teach me, just the fundamentals of figure drawing, painting. We went from different mediums, from watercolor to acrylic to oils. And he had me reading art books, and we went through like this kind of like artist startup 101 thing. But the one thing I think I learned the most from him was not only how to be a better artist and how to think creatively and all these different things, but I really got kind of an inside look at the business and entrepreneurial side of it, because this guy had been a production artist, a graphic artist, and had been, in the world of marketing and print and everything else with his art, to try to figure out a way to be an artist and still get paid and survive, right? And I believe he was in his 40s, late 40s, early 50s. He decided to basically retire from the industry and then go full-time freelance. And at that point, he was doing a ton of wildlife prints. He was just drawing and painting on a full-time basis, and then found a way to either do commission work for big companies like Miller High Life or, Ducks Unlimited, stuff like that, or was just selling prints and artwork straight out to people. So to kind of sit back at that age, I believe I was about 16, to sit back at that age and kind of get a front row seat to the entrepreneurial side, that was pretty interesting. And I also then knew like, well, there's another avenue. I know it's doable. I know it's possible. And I know somebody can actually be an artist and make a living. When that summer was over, he basically came to me and said, hey, if you just want to continue this thing, we'll just keep doing it. And, we'll just, we'll get together once in a while. We'll draw, paint. I'll teach you whatever I can teach you, and we'll go from there. So when I started, like I said, I was probably 16 years old, but I didn't stop meeting with his name is Gene. I didn't stop meeting with Gene till I was probably 20, 21 years old. And, again, it probably wasn't as frequent as when I was younger, but, after I left school, went to college, whatnot, whenever I would come home, I would meet with him on a regular basis. And he kind of became, He was kind of my Mr. Miyagi, kind of helped me through my early stages of not only college but my career.
So, college. What did you end up getting a degree in?
I ended up actually, I was looking at the Art Institute in Minneapolis, and I had looked at some different like straight up art schools, and I'm not going to say they didn't appeal to me, but they really didn't. I mean, it wasn't like a no brainer. And I actually went and toured a technical college because it was, a little bit more direct as far as, you had this much for generals, but the bulk of it was just industry related. It was a lot more hands on. And I had met their instructors, which all of them were super accomplished and awesome. Like one of my instructors he had spent his whole career in the agency world in Chicago. Another guy was a straight up sign painter, so like he had a very hands-on artistic background of how basically he had built several sign companies and had sold them off. But the guy that kind of sold it for me was an illustrator that was there. His name was Myron Solberg, and he was the best illustrator, the best artist I'd ever seen in my life. Like his work, his watercolor, his drawing, just when I saw his artwork and I'm like, wait, what's your role here? And he's like, I'm the illustration instructor. And over the course of your 2 years, you'll have this many classes. I was like, that's the guy I want to work with, because I knew that if I was to go down that Disney road, if I was to go down that comic book road, whatever it was, this was going to be the guy that could get me there. Like he was fantastic. So once I saw, that, kind of perspective of it from who I'm going to be learning from and what they're going to be teaching me, I chose to go to that technical college right out of school.
And obviously, the next thought in most people's mind when they're gearing up to graduate college is, oh crap, now it's time to get a job. I've got bills to pay. You have reached that adult life status. So as you're finishing up your 2 years there, what's your thought process? And okay, what's my next move? Where do I go from here? How do I take what I've learned in these 2 years and start my career?
Yeah, so I mean, even since I was a young kid, I've kind of always been a hustler and an entrepreneur. So even as a very young kid, if my brother showed up with a dirty car, I was like, hey, dude, give me $5. I'll wash your car. Like I was always trying to find a way to, kind of get ahead and find a way to make money and to, do something. So when I was getting out of school, I was working throughout school and finding ways to either create art, sell art. I used to do a lot of picture framing. So I had bought a mat cutter, and at that point, I had actually found a company that would sell basically frames and mat board directly to me as though I was a distributor. So I was a college kid, and I had basically set up this account with this framing company, and I was getting frames at a wholesale price so that when I would frame and do these different things for people, I had some room for margin and some room for markup. So I was really kind of busy doing all these other things the whole time. And the reason why I say that is because I just want to illustrate the hustle part, because when I was getting closer to being done with school, my brother was a teacher down in South Texas, and I was going down there just as kind of a vacation spring break thing. And I was like, well, since I'm going down there anyway, I'm going to set up a series of interviews so that I can, kind of get a better idea as to what's going to happen in the next couple months. Cause I know when I start interviewing, when I graduate, I start interviewing. I kind of want to peek behind the curtain a little bit as to what that looks like, maybe some questions they're going to ask me, whatever. And then it was also an opportunity for me to get my portfolio kind of reviewed by people in the industry, and I could work out some of the cobwebs, because at that point I was pretty nervous about, like, I don't really know what to say or how to present myself or how to sell my artwork or whatever. So I had set up these series of interviews strictly as an exercise for me to gain knowledge and to hopefully improve my chances of getting a job when I was done with school, because I know how competitive it is. I know that I'm going to be competing against a lot of kids that I'm actually in school with currently. So I had set up these interviews. So long story short, I went down to Texas for this spring break. I went on 5 different interviews, and I ended up getting 3 offers. So I was like, oh, well, what do I do with that now? Because here I am at the end of March. I've got 3 offers and I don't graduate till May. So I came back to Minnesota, went back to school, and told my instructors, hey, this is what I did. I set up these interviews while I was gone, and I ended up getting some offers. And because placement is such a huge thing at these schools, colleges, whatever, they basically said, we'll just graduate you out with everything you've got today. So, and I was doing well. I mean, I don't want to say I had straight A's, but for the most part, I had straight A's. And they just said, we'll just graduate you out with where you're at today. If you choose to take one of these jobs, and of course, if you choose not to, you can stay, but we'll support whatever you want to do. And I think part of it was because where I was at grade wise, but also because like placement wise, they're like, yeah, if we can get a kid employed before the end of the year, let's get them out of here because that helps our placement numbers. So I thought about it, and the couple places, they were a little bit more, not maybe in my wheelhouse, even though they were offers, they were not as much in my wheelhouse. But the one out of the 3 that were offered to me, one of them was a very small agency. And it was another situation where I was going to get a lot of one-on-one attention from the owner. And I knew that I needed that. I knew that I wanted to do that. But also what was super attractive about it was that I didn't necessarily have to start at the bottom. And what I mean by that is if you're a graphic artist or a creative, a lot of times you got to cut your teeth doing black and white ads for a while. You got to do magazine layouts. Like you have to do a lot of things that aren't that fun, put it that way. Well, not that I didn't have to do some of that, but when I started that job, I accepted that job in Texas. I got thrown into the deep end of the pool and I got to do a little bit of everything, and I got to do a lot of fun stuff right out of the gate. So even though I did a lot of little ads and stuff for chamber magazines and things, I got to do big posters. I got to do big illustration projects. I got to really, kind of figure out exactly what I wanted to do, but also it was a sink or swim type of environment where I had to rise up, catch up. I had to learn myself and my capabilities real quick, because all of a sudden, not only am I living, on the other side of the nation now all of a sudden, but also I'm in a job where the guy's like, hey, I hired you. You told me you could do this. Your portfolio basically said you could do this. So here you go, knock it out. So it was really kind of a trial by fire environment right out of the gate, which I thrive in. I love that. So the first 2 years of my career being in South Texas at this ad agency, I just know that I probably got more and or a little bit more aggressive experience than most of the kids or most of the people I graduated. Stay connected by following us on social media. There you'll find a steady flow of information on Cyberdogz, our customers, and the work that we do. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/CyberdogzMarketing, on Instagram at instagram.com/CyberdogzMarketing, or on Twitter at twitter.com/